And our top focus this hour is the Brexit, and Prime Minister Theresa May, who has suffered a humiliating defeat as the Brexit deal was overwhelmingly rejected by the British Parliament. UK's House of Commons voted 432 versus 202 against the divorce deal, with less than 2 months to go for 29th March, which is the deadline for Britain to withdraw from the EU. The United Kingdom is now facing its deepest political crisis in almost half a century. The country now has to figure out how or even whether it should exit the European Union in the first place. Britain has been a part of the EU since 1973. May's crushing loss marks the collapse of her 2-year strategy of trying to forge an amicable divorce by trying to stay as close to the EU as possible after Brexit.
The House has spoken and the government will listen. It is clear that the House does not support this deal, but tonight's vote tells us nothing about what it does support. Nothing about how or even if it intends to honour the decision the British people took in a referendum Parliament decided to hold. And people, particularly EU citizens who've made their home here, and UK citizens living in the EU, deserve clarity on these questions as soon as possible.
In fact, it is the worst parliamentary defeat for a sitting government in 95 years. Unable to secure her EU withdrawal deal, Theresa May will now try to secure her position as Britain's Prime Minister. The government faces a no-confidence vote in 24 hours. The no-confidence motion will be debated throughout the day, and the voting will take place at 7 in the evening local time Wednesday.
After 2 years of failed negotiations. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The results of tonight's vote is the greatest defeat for a government since the 1920s in this House. This is a catastrophic defeat for this government. After 2 years of failed negotiations, the House of Commons has delivered its verdict on her Brexit deal, and that verdict is absolutely decisive.
Moving ahead, May's choices are limited due to the fact that her Conservative Party does not have a majority in Parliament. Possible scenarios for the UK include an attempted but probably doomed renegotiation with the EU by May. Other options include extending the Article 50 process. The no-confidence motion might trigger a general election. And if Theresa May loses the vote, it might result in the collapse of the Conservative government and may bring in a new Prime Minister. Meanwhile, the Remain protesters are also demanding a second EU referendum. And to add more perspective to this news story, I'm joined in by our London Bureau Chief, Mandy Clark. Mandy, a very good afternoon to you. How do you view this entire scenario at the moment? You know, there's lots that actually Theresa May has to actually secure her position, because we all know that today the no-confidence motion will be passed. So what are the challenges do you actually see ahead for Theresa May?
Well, there's one person I wouldn't want to be is Theresa May. She has so much to battle forward. Of course, she has this no-confidence motion. Overall, the belief is that she will likely win it because the Conservatives that still do have the majority don't want to see her go. She's already faced a no-confidence vote by her own party, remember, in December. They said they'll back her. The DUP, that is that Northern Irish party, said they'll back the government. So in all likelihood, not much is going to come out. She'll likely win this no-confidence vote. But after if she does win it, she still has to go back to Brussels, try and renegotiate a deal that will please the House. And the biggest issue is the House of Parliament certainly made it clear what they don't want, but they haven't made it clear what they will accept. And that is the most difficult thing she will face, because she has to be very clear with the EU exactly what will pass in the government. They don't really want to go back to the negotiating table, hammer out a deal, and for it to fail again. So really it's going to require kind of cross-party talk to figure out what way forward.
Mandy, the European Council Chief Donald Tusk has said that the Brexit deal at the moment seems highly impossible. Do you think the government could actually be a second time lucky? And what do you see for Plan B?
That is the million-dollar question. What is Plan B? She made it very clear there was no other Plan B, but now she's going to have to somehow pull out a Plan B. there's Remainers on one side who desperately just want no Brexit, that there is no solution, no deal is going to be bad for everyone. They want no Brexit. Of course, the Brexiteers on the other side, they do believe that a no deal is not the end of the world. They just want out of the EU. So that's what the two opposing sides. She needs a third way that will encourage business and stability for the country, because a no deal Brexit will likely really hurt the country economically. And just looking at the front pages of the newspaper today, it's really split on the way forward. You know, the Sun.
Mandy, that also brings me to this question that it's been a historic Commons defeat. How has the UK media actually reacted? I wanted to come to that, and it's interesting that you just mentioned it.
Yes, well, it has really divided. You know, it's divided the newspapers. The newspapers here are split left and right. It's divided the country, and the newspapers really run along those lines. We're seeing that reaction. The Sun, which is a tabloid paper, was anti-Brexit. They have called her deal dead as a dodo. Don't know if you can see that there, but they've made Theresa May in the shape of a dodo bird that's obviously extinct. That's how they keep her deal. Then there's the Daily Mail, which is very pro-Brexit. They had supported Theresa May's deal. They are carrying the story, but it's fighting for her life. They really see this as the end times for Theresa May. She has to pull out a miracle if she wants to continue her political career and save Brexit. Then in the more kind of grown-up broadsheets, we're seeing the Daily Telegraph, which is a conservative art paper that supports it. They are really, but they are very pro-Brexit, and they call it a complete humiliation. And finally, the Times, which is probably the most balanced, they had the jubilant crowds after the vote. So it's a mixed spread how the papers are reacting, but really it's the only story that's happening today in the UK.
It certainly was a mixed spread, as you rightly mentioned, and you can clearly see how divisive the opinions not only in the media are, but with people also. Do you think that a second referendum is a possibility?
I think it's a possibility, but is it going to do what the people want? So the people who are really calling for what they're calling the people's vote, those are Remainers. They believe they've made enough argument, they've proved enough that Brexit is not good enough, and they believe a second referendum will lead for a decision to remain in the European Union. But the polls tell a different story. It shows that people's opinion really hasn't changed that much. The people who voted Brexit have almost more entrenched in their views that Brexit is the way forward. The people who voted Remain are the same way. So even if it goes to a second referendum, there's no guarantee that it will change the result of the vote.
That's a very interesting point that you made, that even if a second referendum was to go forward, there's no guarantee that, people would actually be changing their opinion. Thank you so much for bringing the current perspective in the UK for now. Mandy Clark joining us there live on Wion.